Hello, I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. I'm going to tell you something about me that I have never mentioned on any of the videos up until this moment, and that is I'm a real fan of Bill Maher's program, Real Time, and even before that, Politically Incorrect. I've been watching Bill Maher for decades, and I love the guy. He's got a great sense of humor. He has incisive wit. I don't always agree with him about many things, particularly his attitude toward the paranormal. As you might imagine, I think, as best I can figure, he thinks that anything having to do with the paranormal is superstition, the sort of thing that he lumps together with all sorts of religious folly. So I have a big bone to pick with Bill Maher. But lately, when it comes to his politics, I'm in general agreement with him about many, many things. Not everything. I think he's a little bit harsher on Muslims than I would be. But in any case, I can say this. I watched his program last night, the 3rd of August, and I believe it was very likely the very best episode that I've ever seen of Bill Maher. So I'm excited about it. I'd like to share it with you, but I know it's going to be very controversial because it was about politics, and politics divides people pretty much. Well, I guess, my father always used to say, don't talk about politics or religion with people. You'll just get into trouble. And as he was a businessman in a small town in Wisconsin, and that was probably very good advice, and he didn't even want his family members to do it. But we are in an era, I think, where it's unavoidable. And I feel very strongly about this. There were things said in that Bill Maher episode that touched me. And part of it is the outrage. The absolute outrage that I feel about what the American people have been subjected to, a president who just constantly lies. It's, one of the guests was Steve Schmidt, who is the former campaign chairman of John McCain, who has now officially left the Republican Party. And I know many other Republicans are leaving the Republican Party and urging their colleagues to vote for Democrats in the upcoming election. It is so very important, in my opinion, that there be some checks and balances against this president because the Republicans aren't doing it. I mean, just last week, here's what we had, and my blood is boiling over this. We had the leaders of the National Intelligence Services hold a press conference to say how serious the Russian threat is, that the Russians are attacking our upcoming election, which is some 94 days from now. And that this is very serious and that they're doing everything they can to stop it. Well, we know the president isn't really helping them at all because the very same day in one of his rallies, he said the whole Russian investigation is a hoax and the attorney general should put an end to it. It's interfering with him having a good relationship with Putin, of all things. How can that be? Is it a hoax or is it a serious threat? How is it that the President of the United States isn't even on the same team with his own appointed directors of national security, the head of the FBI, even the head of the Homeland Security and intelligence? They're on different pages altogether. And of course, it gets far worse than that. Well, for those of you who have HBO, I encourage you to watch that Bill Maher episode if you haven't. I'm sure it'll be available to you on videos on demand. For those of you who don't have HBO, I am linking to some of the segments from that program that are available now on YouTube. So I can link to them. Now, I should say this. Some of my closest friends, people I have enormous admiration for, are Trump supporters and enthusiasts. Now, I do want to talk about this notion of the Trump derangement syndrome. Steve Schmidt made a point on the Bill Maher program last night that what is happening to the American public when they're being bombarded by lie after lie after lie from Trump every day, I think according to the New York Times, averaging 7 lies a day. And I'm told that here in 2018, the first half of 2018, he had more lies than in all of 2017. Now, I know they use a very liberal definition of lies, but nevertheless, they're there. And this example of where Trump calls the Russia investigation a hoax while his top appointed officials are saying it's very serious what's going on right now. Trump wants to have closer ties with Russia at the very moment when they're attacking our elections yet again. Well, Steve Schmidt points out that he's wearing down the public with this barrage. And people are just getting weary of it. And Bill Maher is suggesting, where is the anger? Why aren't people really up in arms? Well, of course, we are a republic. We are a democracy. We're not accustomed to having all the values that have made this country great for 200 years being in effect trashed. But I want to say this about the Trump derangement syndrome, which is the common phrase used by Trump supporters to kind of dismiss the anger that other people feel about Trump. He is engaging in a process which is very well described in a 1930s movie called Gaslight. He's gaslighting us. And in that movie, a man deliberately tries to drive his wife insane by creating all sorts of false stories that he insists are true. And she can see they're false. And so what does she do? She questions her own sanity until she becomes insane. And that seems to be what's going on. It's a very dangerous process. And in the meantime, the public is being distracted by stories about porn stars and sexual episodes and his attacks on LeBron James and everybody. They miss what's really going on, where the whole country, in a way, is being restructured, the court appointments. And I think if you watch the Bill Maher episode, you'll see a very interesting interview with Nancy McLean, a professor at Duke University, who has analyzed, and of course it's all public information actually, the real agenda of the Koch brothers and this new Supreme Court appointment to actually rewrite the Constitution to favor the right-wing agenda. That's going on very quietly. And in fact, she says 28 out of the 34 required states have already signed on to holding a new constitutional convention for the first time in our country's history since the original constitutional convention, with the idea of rewriting, adding 10 new amendments to the Constitution. That's the Koch brothers' agenda. And while it may seem as if Trump is quarreling publicly with the Koch brothers, he's on board with their agenda. His White House lawyer, Don McCann, is supposedly handpicked by Charles Koch. Well, I am not an expert on politics. It's not my full-time profession. I am not a political pundit. I just have very strong feelings about it. And from time to time, I need to share them with you to get it off of my chest and to be honest with you about where I stand. I salute Bill Maher for having done the best program I can recall. On the other hand, I really hope that someday he takes a fresh look at the parapsychology data. Here we have the American psychologists publishing a review of decades and decades of research in parapsychology. And the basic message is, 1, it's consistent with leading edge science. 2, the data is very strong. There have been hundreds and hundreds of replications, and the research was done under well-controlled conditions. That's something that everybody should be paying attention to, because this research is truly revolutionary in terms of our understanding of who we are, what it means to be a conscious person. And surely a leading edge social critic like Bill Maher should be paying attention to this sort of thing. Well, where does this leave you? What's in all of this for you? I guess I'm asking you, because I know most of you who view this program are already sympathetic to my arguments about parapsychology, but I ask you to think deeply about what's happening to this country right now. I see enormous divisiveness, and of course you can blame all sides for the division, but shouldn't the President of the United States be making an effort to unify people? Why is he deliberately, over and over again, trying to divide us? What's the purpose behind that? Isn't he serving the agenda of Putin and the Russians? Isn't that really what's going on? And as Americans, should we be standing for that? I'll mention one more thing. In Bill Maher's closing monologue in his new rules, and I'm linking to it right now, you will see his analysis of why the entire Republican Party seems to be behind Trump and his effort to allow Putin to call the shots as to U.S. government foreign and domestic policy. Well, I'll leave you with those thoughts. And of course, I'm happy to read all of your feedback. I know many of you will agree with me, but there will be many who don't. So let me say this. One of the things I really do admire about Bill Maher is his willingness to engage in dialogue with people who have very different opinions than he holds. And I think that's a very positive attribute. I hope that I embody that as well, at least to some degree. So thank you for being with me.